All right. Well, happy Friday and welcome to the IEEE roll call that we are putting together in conjunction with Grants, Resources, and Services in the Office of Research. We have some objectives that are specific to the topic, which are, all around climate and atmospheric science interests across the university. But we also have a meta goal in some ways, which is that we're rolling out this new approach, new to app anyway, of having some targeted gatherings and facilitated interactions between people with similar or potentially complementary research interests around a shared problem. So as you're experiencing this, a couple things to just kind of keep in mind. We are creating this together all the time. So if you have thoughts after about something that you thought could have worked better, please know we're all ears. We're representing things that IEEE is mostly offering, but we will mention a couple of times where our partners in all of this, GRS has specific things that they can also offer to help. And then, keep in mind that this type of thing could be something you can approach us about for other topics that you might have. So those are the two things to keep in the back of your mind for our sort of meta goal on this experiment of the roll call. All right, so let's see. All right, so this is a follow-on to the GRS hosted research forum, which is in the series of research fora that happen often out of the Office of Research. And it was the June 14th one. Several of you on this call right now were speakers at it. Thank you so much. And so we added this on as a roll call afterwards. So, in a forum like that, in order to go deep enough to hear about people's research, you can't have everybody. So it's a representative panel. And we thought, okay, how could we take a next step? Let's add an invitation broadly to have other people who think, oh, I have similar or complementary research interests and collaborative talents I can bring. How do I get in on this and make all of us aware of each other and our shared interests? And coming from this, it doesn't have to be exhaustive, but there are three things specifically that we want you to know that we could do next. There is a new IEEE funding mechanism that has some seed funding to support symposia around specific topics. So if you have in mind that you're ready to lead around a particular problem area in climate and atmospheric science that is a niche that you think we can get external funding around and would like to build or expand your research program, then you can apply for a little bit of funding to bring in external speakers, host a day, this type of an event. So the proposals for the first round of those are due at the end of this month, but we hope to continue that model as well going forward. Another thing you could ask for is there is another request for proposals out right now, a solicitation to catalyze a working group. And this is under the concert program that Grace is the administrator for within IEEE. And that is actually more of a proposal for dedicated staff time and support services from IEEE. Although there can be, if there are costs associated with bringing in somebody or something like that, there could be that too. But it's primarily, hey, we are ready to assemble a working group of people that has an interest in a collaborative project, and we would like some scaffolding, we welcome you to watch the IEEE webinar on working group and support tools, because we can offer some of those things to help shepherd the group, give project management skills, and help protect the momentum and convene people. And then the other thing, and this is where it invokes also GRS, is we can help with pursuing specific opportunities. So by grant writing, we don't mean that we're writing it or that GRS is writing it, but we have services that can really help you identify a good fit and do some amount of editing, reading, helping for competitiveness. And we're happy to do that. So that's the model we're working under. This is just, I think this might be extraneous at this point, but you can also join the IEEE group for Google group for announcements if you want to be made aware of things like the solicitations that we talked about above. And if you want to come back and see this or others that we hope to do going forward, you can come to our YouTube and our website and email us anytime to try to get connected. So let's see. This is just a little bit more about each of these. So on the symposium, we're offering to not only fund maybe the travel, but we can help a little bit with the planning of the agenda and facilitation of a half to 1 day workshop, talk about what the objectives of that might be. We now have a facilitation cost center that is part of our IEEE. So people are kind of writing us into grants here and there on campus to help with designing those types of things that can generate some momentum, and really it's all about growing our external funding competitiveness and success. And then this is a little bit additional information, so you can kind of come back to the slide deck, which are all part of already, if you want to see more about what these are. So the next thing I want to just introduce, you might have seen it before, but it's something we're talking about more frequently as we're leveraging each other's strengths, learning how we can be compatible and complementary with what each other are doing, is identifying and leveraging research infrastructures. So this is just a title that we're giving to everything that we can use to base our research on, and that we can leverage as assets. Some of them, you know that you already use them and this is what you use, and others we find where we sit in this kind of crossroads between colleges, where we talk to people from a variety of places. It's not uncommon that people may be unaware of data sets, physical infrastructures, or social infrastructures like networks that people might have that are on campus. And it's often the case that it could be mutually beneficial. If more people are using your microscope, then there's potentially more support for maintaining it, and there's more momentum toward prioritizing this resource. So the same goes for others. And this is just examples of these types of research infrastructures, which we're going to continue to try and inventory and build up. One is, we want to enhance and connect the physical research infrastructures. Those are the easiest to conceive of. I think people know if you have a weather station or, a greenhouse or a microscope, like I said. So those are things. There's also building and connecting efforts around data and information infrastructures. And so this is like, for example, the CDAC fossil fuels data set that we are lucky enough to be the stewards of here at AppState, and Apple Air data, Aqua data, energy efficiency data for the whole campus. So these are infrastructures because they are assets that not everybody has access to, and we have, and we could potentially be harnessing and leveraging them more, and potentially sharing as a resource for others of our colleagues. And then same with social infrastructures, which are critical to particularly collaborative research projects, but also just applied or translational research projects where there's visible implication of the research on the local or global community. So are these local government relationships that we have in place and are protecting? Other examples that we have here are, indigenous community leaders or high country agricultural stakeholders. These are, people have put a lot of time, money, effort, energy, soul into investing in and creating these infrastructures. So we want to identify them for the purpose of leveraging, but also protecting. So if somebody has created a really great relationship with a farm, it is not only important for us to harness that, but also protect it and not have 45 people be pinging them. So there are kind of offense and defense reasons for us to be making sure that we're strategic in identifying these research structures. So then here's the things that if you turn that on its side, the other idea is that multiple use research infrastructures, if you see this through line where project 1, 2, and 3, which may have different aims, objectives, and players, are all using the same research infrastructure, then we might call this a convergence platform. So for example, the Sustainable Development Farm, there's people in many different fields doing work out there. Or, the greenhouse that has people from chemistry, fermentation sciences, sustainable development, sustainable technology in the built environment. There's lots of different people. And when we know that it's really valuable, then, as RIEEE, for example, we can say, hey, this is really important to our constituent researchers. We need to look at trying to galvanize resources, to put some effort behind it, and just make people aware of it. So that's just what I said there. Okay. Oh, this is an example of where it's a known connection. Everybody's using it. There may be this other opportunity where, hey, if I just knew that there was a social infrastructure in place, maybe my project could also take advantage of this, and then we can grow together. So this leads us to this spreadsheet, which we're trying to gather for all of our collaborative projects. So we just have an inventory of sorts. What are all of those different categories of infrastructures that your research depends upon? This helps us communicate in multiple directions to funding sources. We can say, look, this is a facility, this is an asset that makes us competitive for this external funding. It can also kind of consolidate this information for different audiences in the university that may have ability to support these things. So I want to make sure it's very clear. I'm not speaking for anybody but RIEEE, but it can be really helpful for us to consolidate quantitatively this information about who has and who needs things. Because if we see this critical mass of everyone needs X or everyone uses Y, then that's just useful information for people who are trying to be strategic. All right, so we wanted to, at this point with that kind of background, ask everybody who is willing to go into the chat, and don't put anything yet. We like to do this little exercise that's called a chatterfall. I don't know if any of you have ever done this, but basically you type in the answer for what was your motivation, what brought you here to this particular hour and a half of your precious Friday time. And if you would take a minute and type it in, but don't push enter, then in a minute, I'll count down 3, 2, 1, and then you get like a waterfall of all the chats. It's a really neat way to see everybody's thoughts at the same time. Move my chat bar over too so I can see. Just give everybody a second to think about it. All right. And then when you're ready, 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, nice. Okay, this is great. It's really neat. I like this mixture because some people are curious and just interested. Some people are actively looking for collaborations. I talked to at least one person who was considering attending where it's, you know, they may or may not have any room on their dance card for more collaborations, but they have resources that they'd be willing to share and are curious. So we might all be here for different reasons. And I love that the through line is curiosity here. Thanks for that. Okay, so our work today, what our plans are for how we're going to use this time. We said in sharing about this event and inviting you to it that we have 3 objectives. 1, sparking new ideas. 2, creating and building on connections for collaboration. And 3, inspiring next concrete steps toward building our research leadership in this space. So concrete steps could be anywhere along the spectrum from formulating our ideas to mobilizing on a plan. So great. And Grace had this great idea to actually explicitly say this at this point, which is just a reminder that all of the exercises that we're going to invite everybody to do today after we hear from each other are ideation. So that you can wildly brainstorm without anyone being allowed to say, well, Baker promised he would do this because he came up with a question. So all of your ideas are just ideas. And a suggestion does not obligate you to mobilize on any of it. And then we're at the start of each of our mini activities, one of which we have created for each of our 3 objectives above. We'll pause for a moment of quiet reflection. That can feel weird on a Zoom, but in reading the literature on intellectual personalities and cognitive diversity, we need all kinds of processors among us. And some people do really well thinking out loud when everyone's already talking, and other people need a moment to collect. So in those quiet moments, we're including everybody's brain in it, and encourage you to just roll with it and brainstorm with us. So what we'll do is first have our lightning talks. So everyone who has prepared a slide, who is gonna follow the template to say, what their interests are, the methods and maybe equipment that they bring, and what they hope to get from a collaboration and give to a collaboration. We'll go through those, and then we will move through each of three. Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze. Whoop, sorry. Well, I'm glad that's recorded. So we'll go through each of three objective-driven activities, and so we'll do that. But before we go into the lightning talks, I wanted to invite, you know who you are if you have come here and are wanting to participate. We're so glad you're here, but you don't have a slide. I wondered if I could invite you to, if you like, just introduce yourself and perhaps say your role and what you're hoping to get out of this session as well. And I think Greg Marland, Ece Keratan, and Steve Siegel might be the folks that fall in this category.
Christine, I think I do too. I didn't prepare a slide for today. I spoke back in June.
Oh, right.
And I won't be able to stay the whole time today. I've got a 2 o'clock, but I was really curious to see what others are doing and just wanted to participate. So, and then just briefly, I'm in physics and astronomy. I do boundary layer modeling with Naval Research Lab, and I've done some atmospheric modeling. And I'm just, again, looking to see what everybody's involved in. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris. Yes, I completely had you in the presenter bin because of your role in the research forum. Thank you for knowing where my brain was. Ece, would you like to go next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Ece Keratan. I'm the Vice Provost for Research. Thank you all for your interest in this roll call and for being here. This is really exciting. Thank you, Grace and Christine, for putting it together. It's the first of many to come, hopefully. I'm here for probably the same reason that everybody else is, not necessarily for collaboration, but to understand the depth and breadth of all the research related to this area that's going on campus, and kind of to see how people are going to ideate together to maybe to go to new places together. But I also won't be able to stay past 2 because I do have another meeting as well. But yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time to come, Ece. Greg, I saw that you put your camera on. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, let me say very quick. Am I mute? Am I here?
You're good.
I think most people know that I've been involved with this Carbon Dioxide Information Analysis Center, which is a data set on carbon dioxide emissions by country that goes back to 1751. One of the challenges has been keeping this funded so we can continue, but right now we have, I guess the contract is almost in place, but we have money from the Japanese space program that's going to support us for another year. And in fact, we've been working on it in anticipation. So the data set was completed on Monday of this week, and it's ripe for collaboration. We mailed copies of the data set on Monday to collaborators in Norway. The contract is a subcontract through a Japanese researcher who is in the US at an organization called USRA. I'm not sure what that stands for, but he's going to be collaborating on it. So we get a variety of things that work. There was a economics seminar here on what day was that? Tuesday, I guess. Jeff Cooper Connor from Australia. By the time he left, he and I were talking about some kind of a collaboration with his economics works on carbon offsets. Tammy, I see, is on your list, but is not here today. Tammy and I have already set up to get together and talk on Tuesday. So I think there are lots of opportunities. It's a matter of figuring out who's doing what and who has time and energy to push greater things.
Thanks so much, Greg. Every time I talk to you, you have a new iron in the fire. It's awesome. All right, Steve Siegel, would you like to go next?
Sure. I think most people here I know, but there's a couple of faces that maybe don't. I'm Steve Siegel, obviously. I'm a professor in the Department of Biology, and I'm a landscape ecologist. I work in a couple of different areas that include the vector distribution of vector-borne diseases and epidemiological risk, and then also looking at the role of forest in production of ecosystem services at large watershed scales. So both of those fields can be and are in other people's research a central portion of how those issues relate to climate change. So that puts me in a position where, you know, that's an opportunity to look at those types of things if I find the right collaborators. I haven't directly gone after the question of climate change and its influence on my own research. The other thing that I do, though, is I wear the other hat of being the director of CEREC, and we're obviously interested in trying to expand that center and develop new interests and collaborations and stuff like that. And hopefully a lot of focus on ecosystem services in its broadest sense. And certainly, then I want to know what's going on campus in terms of things like climate change as it may affect those types of things, and look for opportunities for CEREC to help assist, just like our IEEE is doing.
Thanks so much, Steve. I realized too that Jeff Colby is joining us to bring his expertise and curiosity, but potentially not a slide. So would you like to say next?
Sure. I'm Jeff Colby. I'm a professor in the Department of Geography and Planning. My area of research is in geographic information science, working with satellite imagery and geographic information systems. And in particular, I was interested in this talk. I had a few things to add perhaps to Shay's slide when he gets there in regards to the some geospatial data sets that we have for the Upper South Fork of the New River. So I was going to add that to it. I'm also doing research in terms of remote sensing in mountain environments. And that certainly can be related to climate change too. For example, if you're really going to do a good job of doing quantitative assessment of glaciers in the mountains, then you have to deal with some issues. You have to deal with topography, and that's currently an unsolved problem in the remote sensing field. Those are a couple areas that I'm working in.
That's great. Unsolved problems is it's the name of our game, isn't it?
Thanks, plenty.
Wonderful. Is there anyone I left out? I don't think so, other than the slide presenters. Okay. In that case, with apologies that I only at the last minute thought of unsharing so that we could see each other's faces, I will share again. And welcome Kadiha, and please correct me. Oh, do we lose? Let me see. Oh no, we didn't.
I'm here.
Okay, great. Please correct me so that I can make sure I say your name right if I have not.
Yeah, Khadija Fouad is my name.
Khadija. Okay, Khadija Fouad. Thank you.
So I'm currently interested in working on globalization of science education. So I train people to be middle and high school science teachers, and I want to include global aspects in that. And climate change is an obvious place where science becomes global. And also making connections between our local space here in Appalachia to the whole world. And so what I'd like to do, if there's people who have some interest in developing a K-12 aspect of their work or doing some sort of education outreach, I'd really like to collaborate with them. And as far as funding goes, so I tried to get some NSF funding and they didn't fund it. So I'm in the looking part. I don't really have money, but I'm very happy to lend my expertise to other people's projects, and they don't need to pay me. I just want to collaborate anyway.
Thank you so much, Khadija. And actually, You did it so perfectly that it didn't matter that I forgot to say, if we can try to hit around 3 minutes per person, then we'll be able to have more interaction time around the end. And that's a pretty good offer for collaboration out of the gates. You don't have to pay me. You can just collaborate. I think this is a really interesting one. Thank you so much. Okay, the next person is Eric. Oh, Eric, I'm sorry, you're muted.
I was too excited. I'm Eric Marlin. I'm currently chair of the Department of Mathematical Sciences. I've been looking at a variety of things having to do with climate change policy, particularly centered around things that end up increasing participation and engagement. Short-term storage valuations end up opening opportunities to other people, and making sure the underlying mathematics is correct, which has gotten me interested in science communication, both with people to lay audiences, as Khadija mentioned, so we may need to talk, but also to scientific, non-scientific audiences and to people who are, at least currently, science skeptics, and understanding how to use a little bit of conflict resolution theory and some communication theory to try to build connections rather than the current trend of pushing people away. So those are some of the things I'm interested in. And I don't have a huge amount of time, but someday I won't be chair, and I'm always interested in an interesting chat.
Thank you so much, Eric. Okay, all right, Shay Tuberty.
Hey everyone, Shay Tuberty. Been here at the biology department for about 20 years and came in with some experience at EPA doing impacts of new classes of insecticides on non-target species, but have kind of gone back to my roots in biodiversity assessment and biomonitoring, and have teamed up with Jeff Colby, who you heard from earlier, to form what we're calling the App Aqua Research Cluster. We have greater than 10 years of data so far on 8 different sites within the upper South Fork of the New River. Jeff's expertise is in the GIS and land cover assessment. And then we have been working with a number of other faculty in geography, geology, and biology to make connections between land cover and land use to water quality and biodiversity impacts. So we're looking at everything from climate change impacts to land cover changes. So we can look at small changes or large changes in land cover in Watauga County and within the New River, and then look at those impacts on a yearly basis to the biodiversity. So things like road salt impacts and impervious surface and whatnot. So that's been pretty exciting. What we're looking for are folks that might be interested in using that data set to assess anything that you might be looking at. We're very close to getting our graphical user interface up and running. So Jeff worked with a grad student this summer to write some code to help us clean data and get it set for and formatted so we can upload it into this graphical user interface. Currently, we're just going through file by file, but the idea is that it would be completely searchable and interactive once in that GUI. So that's kind of what we're at. And what I put in my slide here, if you're looking at the slides, is just some 2006 through current year discharge data for the upper South Fork using just the USGS gauges down at West Jefferson, just showing the increase in numbers of giant rain events and storms impacts on flooding. So using the 4,000 CFS down there, 50 miles downstream, usually means our Boone Mall is underwater. So until the last 2 years, we were seeing this steady incline and seeing as many as 7 flooding events in 1 year. Just to put that in perspective, never happened in 90 years of monitoring the New River. So climate change and the intense rainfalls and flooding events are real here. So that's one of the things we're kind of looking at. What impacts are those having on our rivers?
Thanks so much, Shay. Okay, Baker Perry is next.
Hi, everyone. Baker Perry, Geography and Planning. Our main interests are in mountain weather and climate and also snow and ice. And, I guess this was about 14, 15 years ago. I was a founding member with Jim Sherman, Brett Taubman, and Howie Neufeld and others with the AppleAir on campus. But over the past 7 to 8 years, I've been pulled away to more international opportunities, activities, funding. And right now, my research really is focused on water security, climate change impacts, and some of the most important and vulnerable water towers in the world, mainly the high Andes, tropical Andes, and the Himalayas. And are really focused on the atmospheric processes driving the snow and ice ablation, and also moisture source regions for precipitation that occurs in these regions. So I'm bringing extensive international field experience, weather station data expertise, diverse collaborative networks, mountain climate science expertise, and some trajectory modeling expertise and tools. I'm pretty limited right now in terms of just what new activities I can bring on. We're in the midst of a contract to operate and manage the weather stations we installed on Everest in 2019, and I'm heading that up. And I've got some projects in Peru right now as well. But longer term, I think there's real interests with doing more with remote sensing of the cryosphere, glacial responses, atmospheric forcings, and getting into some of the economic, social impacts of climate change in some of these same mountain regions. So I've got funding from National Geographic and Rolex right now, looking at some opportunities with NSF and also potentially USAID for work in Nepal. And I've got a couple photos on here, including one on the lower, I guess it's my lower right, that from our expedition this summer. In Peru, where we installed a weather station and did snow sampling for water isotopes and microplastics and black carbon. And we had a team from the local university fly a drone to get a DEM produced of the lower elevation. This is on Navarro Alzongate, the highest peak in southern Peru. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Baker. I think the thing that jumps out to me as a federal funding gal historically is just how much a diversification of funding sources is possible when you hit a compelling vein of and the right relationship. So this is fun to build on. Thank you. Marketa, would you like to go next?
Hi, sure. I'm Marketa Zimova. I am in biology. I just started last August, so it's been a year. I am largely interested in whether species will be able to adapt to climate change and how we can help them to do it. So the two main questions I put down here, or that I'm working on currently at App, is how are winter adapted species responding to climate change? So things like snowshoe hares that's here on the left that turn to white in winter to match snow, but there's a lot less snow on the ground these days and will be in the future. And then the second one is how mammals in the Southern Alps are responding to climate change. So I've been starting to focus on mammals that are, that are occupying these sky islands, these last remaining spruce fir forests on top of mountains in the Appalachians. What I'm bringing are experience in designing ecological studies and lot of intensive field surveys, data analysis in R. I have a lot of experience with using and with access to natural history, museum collections, and expertise in animal ecology and evolution. And then from what I'm seeking in a collaboration, I just really enjoy collaborating widely with experts in different disciplines. But in terms of this research, in the past and in the future, it's just been really beneficial for me to collaborate with climate scientists, climate modelers, and folks who do climate downscaling, just because all my research is just really dependent on historical and future projections of climate, and especially cold climate and snow data. And then I'm hoping always to get my findings out there. So if there's ever any chance to do a little more outreach and education related activities, so maybe create some science lesson, I would be always excited to do that. And then for funding, I am planning to submit an NSF proposal within a year and a USGS proposal via the Southeast Climate Science Center. But yeah, thank you for letting me introduce myself, and it's really nice to meet you all.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if I could, one of my jobs as an interdisciplinary person is to be willing to ask dumb questions. So everyone on this call might know exactly how to describe this, and I think I know, but could you say real quickly what climate downscaling is?
Sure, yeah, it's just creating climate data on a finer scale. So taking greater scale predictions and making them more local on finer resolution.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, that you asked me, and there are much better people that can explain what that is, but hopefully that made sense.
No, that was perfect. That's great. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay. All right, Nicholas Klein, would you like to go next?
Hi, I am a composer and I teach in the Hayes School of Music, and so I'm not a scientist or researcher in that sense, but many of my works involve or are topical relating to climate and other sort of scientific or nature-related themes, and so I'm interested in ways that music or sound in general can function in climate science communication and storytelling. So that's kind of my background. There are a couple of projects that I have listed below, links on the slides there. Some of them are more, I would say, metaphorical in terms of using a concept or an idea. Others use specific data. There's a piece I did with earthquakes-induced seismicity, and I'm taking some earthquake data and things like that as part of the piece. And the other aspect that I'm interested in is sonification. I suppose the research that I do is in computer music and sound, and so data sonification, or how sonification might lend itself to overcoming some of these issues in climate science literacy, numeracy, visual accessibility. The charts and graphs maybe don't make sense to people, and if sound can play a role in increasing understanding and awareness.
I am so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. I'm sure other people have a lot of light bulbs going off, but I can see connection with what you're doing with so many of the other folks that have already spoken. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Okay. So the next couple of slides are for people that are not here. I am unqualified to be Billy Armstrong, but I can let you read this slide while also saying that he sends his regrets, would love to make everybody aware of what he's doing. The person who pushed him to come was Marta Torin, who's also in the Geological and Environmental Sciences department and is a consummate connector and educator. So she was saying, you're a part of this group. So he also works on glaciers. I know that came up earlier as well. And he wants to know how glacier change impacts downstream systems. So water systems, ecosystems, and creating natural hazards. Shay touched on that a little bit. And he is bringing a lot of satellite remote sensing and GIS skills, some Python and MATLAB data processing, which there is some strong collaborations in the GES department that others can draw on too around that. He's knowledgeable about research questions in Arctic Earth system science, and he is seeking ecologists, geomorphologists, hydrologists interested in linking glacier change to downstream system change. And he is in the funding forecast, he is looking at an NSF proposal to the Arctic Natural Sciences, Arctic System Sciences, Geomorphology, and Land Use System Dynamics programs, among others. So, and then these are pictures illuminating his skill set. So I'm, like I said, I'm no Billy Armstrong, but please keep him in mind. And folks watching this back can also kind of understand that he's around and up for collaborations. The next person, I feel like other people, many of you all have worked closely with Tammy. She's a broad collaborator, but Tammy Kowalczyk is in accounting, and her expertise is in carbon accounting, forest carbon programs, and ESG reporting. Greg mentioned that he's got collaborations going and also coming along with her. Her primary research question, which I'm similarly unqualified to represent, but she's very open. So folks either here or watching, please reach out, is accelerating natural climate solutions by connecting private sector investment in family forest and farm carbon programs. And so she's done a lot of some sort of the smaller scale systems analysis, and a lot of it recently that at least I'm aware of has been in local Appalachian communities in terms of the target area that she's an expert in. She's also interested in developing strategies for building climate resilience more broadly in rural areas, coming from that angle of strengthening the private sector and economic stability. She's bringing knowledge in forest carbon programs, carbon accounting, private sector ESG investing, sustainability accounting, grant writing, and corporate partnerships. Speaking of the diversification of funding. She is an award-winning graduate mentor, along with Tatiana Ruseva. And they've got a dedicated graduate student actively working on this area with them. So there's room for collaboration there. She's looking for similarity in interests, I think from a problem area sense, and research goals and expertise in various methods. And then she lists here a few grant opportunities that she's following: USDA Climate Smart Commodities and USDA Conservation Innovation Grants are the two that she listed. So again, I'm inadequate at sharing on behalf of other people. I know people put their whole soul into their work life sometimes, but that's now you have a flavor of it. So she can be in your minds while we go into these next activities. So at this point, I'm going to introduce some activities, and I'm clocking us at 1:46. So those of you that have to leave at 2, you will at least get a sense of the kind of thing that we're going to do together. And you have a link. Grace is about to put a link. She beat me to it, always a step ahead. Thank you. To this shared slide deck in the chat. So if you can open it up and go to Grace, what slide number is this?
Slide 20 now.
Oh, 20? Okay. Awesome. So if you want to open up this thing and go to slide 20, I'll describe the activity. So this is in line with the first objective of this event, which was really to spark new ideas. So all of us are coming to this with our own research agenda and ideas, and we all just heard all these other experts, maybe some ideas swirling. And this is again where nothing is dumb. So, you know, what is it that we want to know? You can add your new intersectional research ideas here. It could just be a question that came to your mind. It doesn't have to be a formulated, you know, research question. But something that came to your mind, and a couple of prompts, because prompts always help me, are there research questions that we may be poised to tackle through what you've learned others of your colleagues are doing here? And based on what you've thought of in today's section, or session is there's something that merges your interests and expertise with others. And so what you can do is go over here to this Post-it stack. Can you see my cursor? Okay, so you go over and you can click on a Post-it and then drag it somewhere off. And then you can type in the Post-it your idea. So we will be gathering all of this over time. We'll do that. And this is where the silent thinking time comes in. You can think to yourself before entering them. You can type it out live. We'll spend about 5 minutes just thinking and then adding things. We can all copy off each other's homework. Maybe you'll think of stuff while other people are putting in. And then we'll do a brief discussion phase after about 5 minutes. So I'll mute and right about 1:53-ish, I'll check in and see if everybody's doing well. So if anyone has trouble actually doing the Post-it, like dragging it and clicking it, please speak up or put something in the chat and Grace and I can help you. I'm actually going to stop sharing so I can do it too for a minute. Okay, keep adding your ideas. Please enjoy. We've got time allotted for all this, but I want to, while you're kind of adding your ideas or taking them in, invite everybody to these are called voting stars in some sense, but we didn't want the implications of I don't know, positive, negative, like what are you voting for? Just your interest could be, I have a question, or I love this, definitely let's do this. But if any of these ideas that you would be interested in either asking something about or seeing it happen, or any interest you have, feel free to go and kind of pick one up, and then you can, let's see, like put it on something that you care about, like that. And then we'll just kind of see what rises to the top. And it won't be an exhaustive discussion, but we have, 5 or so additional minutes set to chat about, first impressions of different things. So I'll give you a minute before I interrupt your thoughts in your interest expressions. All right. So continue your work as you are interested, but if anyone, this is a pretty unstructured next few minutes. And it's important to note that it's not meant to be exhaustive, but just first impressions. Is there something among these, let the good ideas lead us? Like, is there something among this that strikes any of you as like, I'm really interested to follow up on a conversation about this? And for this, we're a small enough group that feel free to unmute yourself and procedurally just speak if you want to.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think, yeah, Nicholas, you're there. The sound and the music part of this is pretty captivating. I was part of exhibit earlier this year with a group called Spatial that uses immersive sound, and maybe you're familiar with them with it. So there was a room that was showing video from Everest and also our expedition in Tupungato, and they had speakers all around, but there were, you probably know more about this than I do, but there were objects that would come and go in front of the speaker so the sound was moving around, and it was a really amazing experience with the video. And so I think, I mean, I'm really excited you're here today. And I think would love to talk more about some of your background and what you've done. I know you've done some stuff with Aqua. So that's one thing. My wheels are turning a bit more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to follow up with that. You know, we went and saw the North Carolina Symphony do the planets, and that was moving. I mean, you could feel the connection with the concepts, you know, through the music. It was, I think that's at least from my perspective, an unexplored way of communicating with a wide range of people and cultures.
So for performances like this, do you have visuals too, or is it mostly just music?
I've done a mixture of things. Yeah, I've done things with film. One of the projects had film projection behind the performers, and I've done a number of the sort of immersive soundscapes with just down the hall from me. We have our new Dolby Atmos studio, which we can create immersive soundscapes in mixing sound and then also down mix it so that it can be listened to just on headphones. So you can create a similar immersive virtual environment that way. So yeah, I'm open to lots of ideas and look forward to talking with you more.
Thank you, Chris, for coming, and thank you, Nicholas, for the openness to the comments from others too. So I think that the future, or the next couple of activities that are planned, keep this current discussion alive because they kind of build on it. But at this point, I'm actually, okay. Thank you, Jeff. We are losing a few people at the half hour, but we can continue to brainstorm together and of course come back to these as you think of other things, because these are the facilitation reins over to Grace to run from here. And she and I co-designed this together and we facilitate stuff together here and there. So it should be pretty seamless. But I will maybe, let's see, now everybody's kind of in their own slides. But the next ones, and some people have kind of moved on, which is fantastic. The next one is the slide 21. So I'll pass it to Grace and let you kind of introduce this part of the activity.
Thanks, Christine. And you're jumping off? I paused for a minute for me. The audio did. You have another meeting, is that correct?
Yes, I had canceled it and it uncanceled itself and called me. So I hope to jump back over, but if not, I will be following along and following up as well with all of you. Thank you.
Okay. So the next two activities, we're just trying to have create an artifact basically from the session, both in the recording, but also with the slideshow for others to refer back to or add to later. But the second objective was to kind of consider what it is that we might need or what's missing to be able to make some of these collaborations and these ideas move forward. So we're going to do something very similar. The prompts there just kind of help with to build on these connections. What do we need? So who else is needed? One of the questions that came up, I see some people already put environmental economics folks here, but if there are specific potential collaborators or expertise that we might look for outside of the university, community partners, things of that sort, we'll do the same thing with Post-its and try to generate some ideas here. And we're a very small group now, so maybe we'll take about 4 or 5 minutes to work on this piece. and then reflect a little bit. Okay. And yes, Eric, I can make stars of different colors. You should also be able to change the setting if there's something that you'd like to do to make our boards a little more interesting. Or to indicate something else, I guess, might also be an intent. It looks like we may have slowed down a little bit, so maybe we're approaching sort of the natural end of this thought process. Feel free to keep working on it if you like. And some have already moved some stars, but if you want a second or one up, some or not one up, but second or support an idea that's here, feel free to move some stars around. Christina, I think that may have been the quickest meeting ever. Welcome back.
So successful. We solved everything.
Best meeting. So if we maybe now take a couple of minutes to kind of talk through or ask questions about any of the things that are up here. I'll start with the easy one. Someone put that RIEEE needs a data scientist, which we are in the process of hiring. Best post-it ever. We can solve that one.
I wanted to bring up this idea that I think it was Christine put in the very middle about connecting the work with education and public outreach. And I think one of the big challenges that I have, and I suspect lots of people have, is that it's pretty easy for me to show up and give a talk and to talk to people and get all enthused, but arranging some of those events is not in my wheelhouse so much. I don't have those connections. So I wonder if there's a good way to collaborate in such a way that somebody who has those connections could coordinate somehow and say, Baker, do you have a slot right here? I know you want to do some outreach, but could you just show up and not have to deal with all of the side parts, just show up and be you. And maybe that would increase more people's ability to do the outreach if all they had to do was show up and somebody else was really excited about doing the arranging.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. I think there's a group from what's our campus down in Winston-Salem, the K, I forget the name of
Lab
it.
school.
No, yeah, it's one of our K-12 or K-8 partnerships down there. One of their teachers had contacted me about they wanted to come up and see a weather station, and just something simple. And it's like, while we're here, we want to do this, and this on campus. I'm like, well, I'm not the one to set that up. So I think I put her in touch with Tracy Salinas, right? Eric, do you remember anything about this and that was great. I just did what you were saying. I just gave my spiel, talked about Everest a little bit. We took them up to show them one of the stations up by the Broy Hill, but she or her team arranged all that. And so it's much simpler to do those sorts of things if, as Eric says, a slot, you have a time and a slot that works in a schedule, and then there's somebody else on campus, and because there's a lot happening on campus. And that was the other thing. It's like, yeah, I can show you what I'm doing with my stuff, but if you're coming all the way from Winston-Salem, you need to do more than just hear from me.
Well, I know of a little center on campus whose half of their name is environmental education that would love to have somebody associated with them on hard money that would do just these things. That would be Sarek, obviously. But that's exactly the idea that has always underlain the idea of the environmental education component of Sarek, and we've never had support to develop that. I mean, it really died away after a couple of years with Mike Madrich's wife being in a leadership role, and even that wasn't really funded internally. So it's just something that's never gotten its due, perhaps even from the center directors over the years, but certainly not from the university either. But it's a great way to showcase all these types of things, and not just Sarek and not just our IEEE, but it'd be a benefit to the entire university.
Mm-hmm. And there's a natural connection with these lab schools, or whatever we call them now, at Elkin and Winston-Salem. And the chancellor's office, loves to push those connections.
It also sounds like, sorry,
No,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Grace.
An inventory, like a listing of all the possible places to connect for something like that. So, because the Math and Science Ed Center with Tracy Salinas is one outlet. College Access Partnerships has a huge STEM college readiness tour capability. REI, that does the Renewable Energy Initiative, will do tours for students that groups that want to come up and see renewable energy infrastructure on campus. And I'm sure there are others, the GeoBago and all the stuff Marta's doing, but to get that listed in a centralized location, and it sounds like what might be needed here, maybe.
So I love that. And that's exactly that, completely I'm sure no accident, ties back to our social infrastructure inventory. So this is the type of thing we could say every educational outreach infrastructure. And, you know, partly inspired by Nicholas being here, I'm thinking, well, what are other events? What are like Boonerang or other like arts events? A lot of times when people think outreach, they think, oh, do you mean K-12 or do you mean museums? The only two places that we think of, right? That's not everyone, right? Like just having the arts and having other events where people can be brought in to what we're all doing. It could be neat to list all those.
But I think the challenge for me is that there's, I don't have a lot of time, but I have time to show up. And I would love for someone to just say, hey, would you like to give a talk at Hardin Park? And I would say, yes, absolutely, every time. But I don't have the time or the connections to make it. And so, yes, having an inventory and someone who, even if it was like, put your name in a slot, right? Oh, there's somebody coming to visit. They want to talk to Baker. Who else is available? Here are the people that can speak to something that's sort of along the same lines. Oh, well, Greg's free the hour before and Steve's free the hour after. You know, suddenly you have now a whole agenda. And but somebody on the coordinating side where the people who are not experts in outreach can essentially just plug in rather than having to be an expert themselves.
Yeah, it's almost like we need an inventory of people who we need to tell them that they need an inventory of us. Like
Yes.
we are the stable. We, you know, and so know that we are affiliates who are up for doing the thing. Yeah, I almost, and so when everyone was talking, I always think, you know, we always lead with this question, like, why not us? What is the thing that we are the ones for it, right? And so I grew up in Houston, and so everyone from Houston thinks that they went to the moon, right? Like NASA is part of your blood. You are responsible for the space program just because you're there, right? And so I think of space camp. Like, could we be climate camp? Like, why could we be someplace where like, this is where kids want to go for a week in the summer. It's competitive. They want to come here. We have programs. We have the researchers. Like, could we aim at something like that where we're the place on the map that is about this? And maybe it's not climate, maybe it's mountain climate or whatever it is, but it could be really neat to galvanize around something. And maybe we could, oh, go ahead, Baker.
No, I was just going to say that spans not just the physical, natural sciences, but also the social and the humanities here, you know, with, as Nicholas has illustrated. So
I think this, you know, what we're describing here are what we're all feeling is that there are lots of people on this campus that like the idea of being able to show up. I think there would be a huge response on this campus of people that would be willing to do this. And what you get when you've got that type of a resource, if you have the person to coordinate it, you know, it all of a sudden it isn't, okay, here's Baker. Now let's put Nicholas and Eric on either side of him or something like that. No, you can actually develop a theme of choosing the people that fall into whose presentations are going to, you know, chime together. And perhaps even that person who's coordinating this can help explain to visitors that linkages between these areas and stuff. So it goes beyond just filling time. It's like creating a program. And if you've got enough resources, that's the type of thing you can do. And Baker's exactly right. You can pull in the economics folks and after me or somebody else and really tie all these things together. And that's something they don't get in high schools, that type of integration. Heck, our freshmen need it bad.
That's awesome. And actually our conversation is taking a natural turn toward the final activity that we have in place. And I could share this really quick. The final activity is aligned with the third objective, which is the what's concrete, what can we do? Because it's so, we often have these like inspiring conversations, and it's really hard to track what happens because of all the things we've talked about here. So we first wanted to lead in by just saying, oh wait, this is Grace's slide. Grace created this, and so I'm going to pass the baton, not so smoothly, for Grace to suggest all of these things as we lead into brainstorming the concrete steps.
And this slide actually doesn't fit where the conversation went very naturally, because we were thinking of research collaborations and outreach and education, community education around that can be a form of research for plenty of people, or a topic of research. But many of you know these resources that are out there, but we wanted to just kind of give a smattering of things both out of GRS, Grants, Resources, and Services, and the Office of Research, and out of RIEEE that might help support next steps to pick these ideas that were sparked up and take them somewhere, or do something with them if you're so inclined. GRS is implementing Pivot pretty heavily now as our funding database, so they can help you build a customized funding search that would send opportunities that match your criteria directly to your inbox. RIEEE, as Christine mentioned, has now stood up a facilitation cost center, which can be written into grants, but we also do plenty of that for free for researchers on the research development side, for things that are big enough and fit well squarely within our mission. Christine also mentioned the 2 funding opportunities that are out from us for the fall, due at the end of the month, to launch a research working group or to host a symposium around ideas. And then of course, URC and the concert research funds, that'll be released in the spring, but URC is open now. Does not speak directly to the educational outreach needs that we sort of went to naturally, but just wanted to share those things to prime thinking a little bit as we move to the next activity and slide, which is about next steps for the ideas that have come up. And do you want me, I'll hand it back maybe to you, Christine.
Perfect. Thank you. So the final objective of getting together today, even though it was exploratory and we kind of created the objectives together, has been, what should we do first? So asking concrete steps in that way is helpful for me, because we might not know everything to do, but we could have a few first steps. So the working group and symposium ideas, maybe some things are ready for that. Other things, maybe seed funding grant, or then are there items that came up that would be good exploratory conversations? So I see a couple people had preceded things about capturing the assets for the social infrastructures we use for reaching out. Ooh, I like this. I like all these. And it's funny, these are, at the end, whenever we talk about this, making an 1.5-hour meeting is tough because a lot of people can only make the hour of it. But thank you so much for those of you who were able to join us for the whole time, because you can kind of see, just having a few brains in the room, you get so many more ideas from your own brain with that. And we've captured this to seed some of the other folks for what we might go toward next. I see people are continuing to think, but because we are wrapping the end of our 90 minutes, if anybody has something they want to share, please feel free to speak up and discuss in parallel.
I see a lot of interest on the symposium, climate change impacts in mountain regions. You'll see in the solicitation for research symposia that we will help with the logistics to a certain extent for that, but it's also, it of course is funding too. But we would be sort of on your team. We're thinking of a thought leader or a committee that leads the objective of the symposiums or symposia and who might be good speakers, that sort of thing. But then we would help to a certain extent with the logistics and event logistics, either with campus and conference, or what they have a new name now, event services on campus. Just to help lighten the load of that convening function. So whoever wrote that or put stars on it, if you want to submit a proposal, please do. They're due at the end of September.
Related to that, Grace and I have been, for a different project, assembling a faculty team to be co-leads of a particular research project. We're part of a big NSF center with multiple universities, but also to co-teach a course. And through communication of that group, one of our faculty, who is an assistant professor, articulated that it was really helpful to them to have this big group of faculty at different career stages that could sort of serve up a leadership convening opportunity, and that they were eager for that. So one thing we could think of is who are our junior faculty that with some guidance could take on a leadership role of such a symposium, and find that really useful if potentially we don't have that bandwidth. Anyway, I'm sure a lot of you in your various roles in departments and centers are thinking of that, but it made me think to myself, oh, I should be looking for that more often. Like, could we hand a pretty complete idea to somebody and they can run with it, get the spotlight, but you know, have a boost, and also we're not carrying the bag when we have too many bags. Ooh, I like all these. All right. Well, I have to say, too, I guess while we continue to welcome input on any of the slides, I'll transition to this one for Grace as a landing spot, and to say we didn't have an evaluation form created for this. Rather, if you want to email me or Grace or both with any feedback, anything you would have liked to see different or more useful, like, we want to keep making these things better. So please know we're up for hearing any of it. And with that, I'll hand it to you, Grace, for the last minute.
Okay, I think if you're not already subscribed to our Google group, I put that in at the very beginning, but I think most of you are, but if you're not, please join. We send everything to our Google group and most things to the research and faculty announcement Google groups, and even fewer to the campus-wide announcements, just based on the target audience. So if you join this, you'll get everything from us. And then Christine mentioned our YouTube channel, which has a good bit of content there, some webinars that we've archived from each of the 2-3 series we've done so far, but also the overview of our vision for working groups, if you're thinking of that working group funding opportunity that's out. So that's here on YouTube. And I think that's all I intended to drop in the chat today. Okay, and look at that,
Grace,
it's
just
2:30.
a quick question for you. Can you, if we don't know whether we're on this Google group, can you tell me?
I
We can-
can, and I'm almost certain you're on it, Baker.
Okay, okay.
But I'll check. If you're not, I'll add you.
If I'm not on it, please add me.
I will.
And really, I can't thank you all enough for spending your afternoon with us. This is such a interesting time to think together, and really appreciate it, and ready to help y'all and whatever as we move forward.
And if hosting something like this around an idea that you're working on would be of help. I mean, we're thinking of sequencing events like Christine mentioned. So sort of do a little bit of expertise finding if need be, and then a roll call like this might help with the next step. But wherever you are in that trajectory, feel free to reach out and we can help host and facilitate an event for you.
All right. Well, with that, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, everybody.